welcome to another episode of Industry Nights podcast. We have a very special guest here today, Amy from Unmistakably You. I'll just kind of talk for myself. I met Amy. It's funny because there was a time I was doing a wedding and I was asking Stella, I'm like, yo, I need Amy's number. And she gave me your number and I looked at our phone. I'm like, man, we worked together like back in like 2019 or before COVID. I'm like, I didn't realize we actually knew each other for that long.
Yep.
But
tent wedding way back in the before time.
Yeah. Hey, Amy's into wedding coordinating and also planning, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Beautiful venue as well too that you guys have.
Thank you.
But yeah, we're happy to have you. You guys want to chime in?
Yeah. So we usually ask our guests to kind of give us the Coles notes of kind of how you got into your industry and kind of what that career path has looked like, so to speak, and kind of what you're doing right now. And then we'll kind of jump in along the way with some questions.
Perfect. So I got married and I really enjoyed the process. I like to say that I like to boss people around and make lists. So it's kind of like the perfect fit. So got married, and there's this thing that happens to a lot of, stereotypically brides, but couples after the wedding. I mean, you've been so emotionally invested for often a year or more. And the day comes and goes, and then you're like, now what? What the hell do I do now? And so I was sitting on my couch, like pretty much the week after, and I went, I need to find a way to continue this experience. And my wedding went very smoothly, but I had an immense amount of family involvement. My siblings set up the chairs and tables while I got dressed, and my mom and my mother-in-law tore down everything, almost came to blows apparently while they were doing it. But, it went really well, but there were a few things that I was like, I really would have liked to have not had to ask my siblings to do all of that and for my mom to have to tear down. And, it would have been nice to have somebody there that was kind of overseeing all the pieces of the puzzle. And so I hung out my shingle, so to say, and became a wedding planner, which is hilarious because there's really very little barrier to entry, but there's a lot of really bad ones out there. So it started out and gained momentum, and my husband told me later that he thought I'd never do a single wedding, and now we do somewhere between 40 and 50 a year.
How long ago did you get married?
2009.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So you started this business immediately after?
Pretty much immediately, yeah.
You're 14 years in.
Yeah, my first wedding was a Christmas wedding in 2009.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you said that there's little barrier to entry. In a lot of other professions, there often is like a gold standard, like you're part of this, maybe it's a registry or something of wedding planners, and that gives you more credibility. Does that exist in the wedding planning world, or there's not really that like body that kind of oversees credentials?
Well, it's a little bit loosey-goosey in Canada specifically. There is one body that certifies and holds to a professional level wedding planners in Canada, and that's the Wedding Planners Institute of Canada. You can, of course, go through programs at colleges and whatnot, but Wedding Planners Institute is where I'm certified, and it's specifically, focused on wedding planning. But there are organizations in the States like crazy where, it's wedding professionals networking and wedding professionals industry, contributors and whatnot. And there's not as much of that in Canada. So if you do want to become a wedding planner, you could legitimately just kind of say, hey, I'm a wedding planner, convince someone to let you plan their wedding, and then just kind of build from there.
Do you find clients ask you for those credentials, or it's more for you to kind of like be confident, like when you're doing your pitch to your client that, hey, I've got these credentials backing me up?
Yeah, right? The only clients who ever ask me for those credentials are the ones who've found those, they've Googled what to ask when you interview a wedding planner, and they found a list of 50 questions, and it's like question 48.
Yeah.
realistically, I get asked very, very infrequently.
Yeah.
And to be completely honest, now that I'm this far into it, the only way to learn the industry is to immerse yourself in the industry. So I do have the accreditation. I mean, for what it's worth, I felt it was important to do it early on so that I did have that credibility. But realistically, it's the experience and the connections and the recommendations and the word of mouth that is worth its weight in gold in this industry.
Did you do it because at first you might have felt like you had imposter syndrome? Where you're like, I kind of need something to back me up?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, I felt like I'm the kind of person that doesn't half-ass anything. So I kind of felt like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. I want to make sure that I have, overturned all the stones and crossed all my T's and dotted all my I's. I don't want to be surprised by something down the road. From my perspective, my background is actually in music. So I have a master's degree in trombone performance, which is as useless as it sounds.
You haven't performed the trombone at a wedding before?
Nobody asks for solo trombone at their wedding, shockingly. I don't know. So I have a bachelor and a master's in music and then a bachelor in education as well. And so I like to go the whole 9 yards with everything I do. So got the certification and then got the experience, and that's kind of where it comes in. I mean, I don't know that there's anybody out there that doesn't struggle with imposter syndrome if they say that they're not.
Yeah, it's true.
Lying.
Yeah.
So, and we're kind of maybe getting a little bit ahead, but I think this is an important question to ask. So one of the topics that we like to unpack on this podcast is scalability of businesses. And one of the ways that a lot of businesses have started to scale, especially in like the service industry, is providing kind of that like course or like creating kind of that teaching monetization to your business. I would imagine that there's probably others that have already kind of monetized that and created kind of like a wedding planning academy. But with you having a bachelor's of education, is that something that's on your radar?
It is something that has been on my radar for a long time, actually. Both as a planner educating couples and as a planner educating other planners. So from both aspects, in a world where I have more hours in my day, it's something that I will absolutely dive into. It's something that I've dabbled with in the past, but haven't been able to do well. So it's never really gone anywhere because I don't have the time to devote to it. I did work on like a plan your own wedding course a number of years ago, but to be honest, never got it off the ground just because it wasn't the focus of, I need to put my time and effort into the clients that I'm working with. And I just didn't have the time to dedicate to everything and do it well.
So how many wedding planners, I know you have a pretty big team right now. So how many wedding planners do you have kind of working underneath you right now?
Well, right now we have a team of 9, and the way that we sort of structure things is that every wedding that we work has 2 coordinators on site. So there's a lead and an assistant. And so we have 4 leads and therefore the capacity to do 4 weddings on a day. And then we have an assistant with each. And then we've got an extra or 2 in case someone, I don't know, gets hit in the head with a golf club the day before the wedding and can't do the lead, which has happened.
So I was gonna say, it sounds like that's happened before.
Didn't pull that one out of thin air. But we're working in teams always, just because it's
what is? I know that there's a course out there for coordinators and whatnot, but hearing you say how like it's pretty open. It's like DJing as well, right? You have guys that go to DJ school, but for the most part, I don't think that determines if someone's going to make a great DJ. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's how it is with coordinating as well. Like, how do you sift through or figure out like, this is one that I should hire? Or maybe like, how do they come to you? Is there a certain industry that maybe you go dig in for? Or is it just a LinkedIn type of deal?
It's all about personality and initiative for me personally. Yeah. I mean, I I feel strongly that the people that I want to work with and the people that I want to be the face of my company they have to be people who are compassionate and kind and who are personable and approachable and who are going to put the clients first. So the personality piece, the ability to solve problems, the ability to think on your feet, and the ability to kind of see something that needs to be done and just do it without me having to give every single direction every single time. You know, the best assistants that I work with are the ones that know that I never finish a sentence. Like never on a wedding day do I ever finish a sentence because my head is in 18 places. So the best assistants are the ones who can be like, nope, I know exactly what you're saying. I know what needs to be done. And they go do it.
So do you still find yourself, you said you do about 50 weddings a year, right? Mm-hmm. Do you still find yourself very heavily in the do rather than the working on the business? You're working in the business?
I am working in the business. Yeah, I do love that client connection. I often like to say I'd like to pause my life and go and do a business degree or go and do a psychology degree because a lot of what we do is like counseling. I'd like to do so many things, and I feel like the biggest draw for me to the industry is the client one-on-one interaction and seeing just the experience that they're having and the joy on their faces and, when they walk into the room and see it all set up, or that moment when they have their first look, or, the end of the night when they're just so ecstatic and the day's gone so well. Like I don't want to give that up, which is why I am still in the business. I am actively taking steps back though, as I apparently am not getting any younger and I have a 6-year-old and, I don't necessarily want to be out every Saturday of life until 1 a.m. and feel that wedding hangover on Sundays. And so I am taking a step back from that. I'm trying to get better at delegating. So we'll see how that goes.
Do you like the business development side of things?
I do. I would never succeed as like a big time CEO, I don't think, because I am about the big ideas and the creativity and let's do this, instead of the streamlining of the business processes per se. It's a necessity of running a business. You have to figure out
I think you've got some
the T's and the I's and
some great qualities. Like I just, in watching Amy from afar, like I think Amy's very empowering with her staff. I think that she's also a great listener. Like a lot of leaders tend to get like tunnel vision on what their vision is. I've come to see like Amy's very like inclusive of like her staff and like taking their suggestions and being like, you know what, that's a great idea. Let's try it out. You know what I mean?
Also because you clearly hire the right people, right? Where it's like you get that feedback from your team.
Well, and that's something that, everything's a learning curve, right? Like when you asked before about, is there like a place that where it is often successful to find coordinators? Like I've had incredible coordinators come out of event planning programs, and I've had absolute garbage coordinators come out of event planning programs. And so it's more finding the blend of personality and organizational skills that could come from anywhere. I have people on my team who work in early childhood education. I have people on my team who work in healthcare, and it's
still nurturing, caring. It's
absolutely.
Are all your staff part-time, or do you have any full-time staff?
No, they're all part-time right now. Yeah.
So they all kind of like focus on, the lead up to an event. They'll have touch points with the client, I assume, and then like they'll be working that day of event.
Yeah, we do have a very streamlined process that we follow in terms of client interactions when we sit down, when we go through the itinerary and how we put that together. It's important to me that because our whole team intermingles, so we don't always have one lead working with the same assistant, everybody needs to work together. So it's important that the processes and the written documents are all consistent so that you could, in theory, jump into a wedding with no prep and still be okay because you would know how things work.
I think that's a really important topic that we should probably spend a little bit of time on. So I think you can't grow your business, you can't scale your business until you come to that realization that you have to create repeatable processes, right? So at what point because you said you started in 2009, at what point in kind of your entrepreneurship journey did you realize I have to write this stuff down, I have to create, this repeatable process? Or was that something from the get-go that you did and then you're like, hey, I just want my coordinators to do this? Or was it kind of process of discovery?
To a degree, it was from the get-go. I had my process that I had been refining for a couple of years before I hired my first team member. I did weddings for myself, or by myself for a couple of years, and then hired an assistant and then another one when it became apparent that I couldn't do 2 weddings on one day, and I was turning away couples that I would like to be able to help. So I hired another lead, and we continued to work by ourselves for a while. And then I was like, no, this is crazy. You always need 2 hands or 2 sets of hands at least one point during the day. So then we started working with assistants. And at first I was just kind of like orally transmitting the process and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. It has been informally written down for a long time since then. And then I've just recently, like in the past 4 or 5 years, started actively creating SOPs so that I have everything documented. I mean, if something happens to me, if, the business needs to run by itself for a few months or, an undetermined amount of time, there needs to be something in writing so that people can replicate the systems. So they are in the process of being more formally documented.
I think also, like, if you look at it from a really strategic perspective, if you ever wanted to exit your business and you wanted to sell, being able to kind of hand somebody a package where it's like, all you got to do is repeat these processes and it's rinse and repeat, that's a lot more attractive to a buyer than, hey, you have to come in, you have to do a whole process flow analysis and you have to do that, right? So I think that also makes, from a business valuation perspective, a more attractive product, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's on my mind. I mean, again, not getting any younger. I can't physically imagine being 65 and schlepping a crate of decor across a hayfield in the 40-degree humidex, right? So that's on my mind in terms of an exit strategy, presuming that I'd like to retire at some point.
Yeah. So when you made this decision in 2009, were you employed somewhere else or you were? Okay. So you did it part-time, like hybrid for a while.
Yeah. So worked for the school board as a teacher and still do, actually, which is another reason why the wedding education has to take a back seat, because
so you're
I'm
still actively full-time teaching?
100%.
Wow.
Yeah. This is why you have no time.
Exactly. That's exactly why.
Okay. So is the goal to make this your 100% hustle, or you want to keep it as a side hustle?
Well, the problem is I love everything that I do, and I have never been a person to quote unquote quit something. So, like I was the person that took dance lessons until I physically moved away, and I took piano lessons till I physically moved, like those kinds of things that I don't want to give anything up ever. And I do absolutely love the education that I do. I love the weddings that I do, but it's 2 full-time jobs. So.
All right, I'm going to pressure you a little bit more.
Oh, great.
So if you had someone with a literal gun to your head and said you had to make a decision, you're either going to continue on with being a teacher or you're going to be a full-time wedding planner, and you have to make that choice.
Given the current political climate, weddings.
Yeah.
No way, for real. I thought you were gonna be like teaching for sure. Interesting. It's tough.
I mean,
what do you mean by that? The
kids are dicks, man.
No, not that. It's okay.
We're about to get censored off YouTube and everything right now.
The kids I teach are mostly great.
Yeah.
It's the administrative bullshit and the political garbage. Like our wonderful Minister of Education right now I don't know what I can say on here and what I can't say. doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground.
I don't think the Minister of Education is going to be watching this podcast.
I mean, he might.
He might.
If he is, I'm getting fired and I'm doing weddings full time. So there you go.
We're not getting anybody fired.
We are gonna let the fates decide where she lands.
Such a villain.
Everything happens for a reason, okay?
You know what? I hope the Minister of Education watches this, so you can go.
You know, I think I probably speak for about 98% of teachers when I say that what we're doing is because we love teaching and we love the kids, and not because we love all of the, bureaucratic red tape that comes with it.
But so let's go hypothetical here, and I think you know this deep down. So deep down, if something happened and you're no longer teaching tomorrow, how does that change the dynamic of your business, and what would that mean for the growth of your business? What would you do tomorrow in terms of, okay, now I have all this extra free time, what would you focus your energy on to grow your business?
That's such a tough question.
It's not.
It's actually not. I know. Look at you.
She's already thought about it.
Yeah, I do know this actually. So I would step back from coordinating in a day of capacity. So we do full service planning, day of coordination, and kind of everything in between. The day of coordination is the bulk of what we do because we're in a pretty conservative climate here. And I think that's kind of what people in our geographical region are willing to commit to financially. But I would push for more full planning for myself. I would take all the full planning clients, and then I would step into that education realm as well. I think at this point, it's something that I've planned out in my mind for years and just don't have the time to implement. So
if you went full time, could you go from 50 weddings a year to 100 weddings a year?
I could go, not without hiring more coordinators.
What would stop you to do that? Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah. I mean, it's, anything's possible. I certainly couldn't plan 50 weddings in full in a year personally, but we could increase the day of coordination and then hopefully increase the full planning for myself as well.
Do you have like an operations manager right now, or you handle all that?
It's me right now.
Right.
I have client relationship manager, I have a studio manager, but most of the other hats are still on my head.
What about communication and management? There must be some kind of software you're using to kind of help balance everything.
I do use a CRM system that manages all of our contracts and estimates and invoicing, and we have automated workflows that we use for different services that we provide.
Is it industry specific, or is it like something like HoneyBook or something?
It's very similar.
There's so many out there now that like, and it's customizable and
they're
whatnot.
all very similar. Yeah.
What does CRM stand for, by the way?
Client relationship.
Yeah. Is customer relation or client relationship manager.
Okay. Interesting.
It's very similar to HoneyBook. It's called 17 Hats. So it's not industry specific. There are wedding industry specific ones like Aisle Planner out there that, I would switch to if I were more of a technologically savvy human. But right now, I know the system. I've used the system for years, so that's what we're doing right now, and it's working fine for us.
So I want to ask you this question. This was the one question I wanted to ask. Yeah. So I had this idea knocking around in my head because we're all kind of involved in the wedding industry, right? And there's got to be a solution out there, but it's clearly not well marketed if it exists. And I'm curious to see if it does exist based on your knowledge. So today, to my knowledge, there's nowhere that you can go on the internet and say, I'm having a wedding, it's 100 people, here's my budget, and here's what I'm looking for. Vendors, you give me all your bids. Kind of like city projects.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Bark was?
So we discovered this, but I'll let you finish.
I don't have anything.
$1 billion idea.
I don't have anything profound to say about that.
Okay,
I feel like there have been a couple of startups that have perhaps had that as their end game, but I have seen a couple of like people cold call or cold email or whatever. And I haven't seen anything that really presents a solid business plan that sounds like,
If you could execute on that idea, which
So
is
let me-
basically a
let me
bidding
explain.
process,
We're literally
that is a
talking about
$1 billion
this.
idea.
We were talking about this earlier today because I'm like, yo, check this website out because we came across it. It's called Bark. And what they
BARQ?
BARK, like a dog barking.
Okay.
And you basically buy credits and use them on this website. So the cost comes from the vendor. And people go on there, they say exactly what they want. I'm doing a wedding, I have this, that, I'm looking for a photographer. And in order to get that person's information, you have to use credits. And then it unlocks the phone number and email.
Yeah. So there is
That's still not kind of like...
there is a site
right
like
model.
that called Event Active that
Similar
is
idea?
a similar idea where I have a profile on Event Active. I have said what services I provide, couples input, their wedding date and what they're looking for, and then it sends me the basic amount of information, but no contact info.
Exactly.
And if I want the contact info, I have to pay per lead.
Exactly.
But it's not well vetted.
So I would structure it completely differently.
Yeah.
Correct.
So the way I would structure it is that every vendor has access to this event and they submit the bids, and then based on their execution on the couples that have used them, they're going to get reviews, right? So
But where does your income come from?
it's a cut.
So when they put down even the deposit, you could take it off then
Exactly.
too.
It's a cut of the whatever the fee is, right? Sure. So that's how both the website would get paid, and that's how the vendor would get paid.
See,
You're
this is
competing
a-
against Facebook.
This
though.
is the
Facebook's
problem.
already
This
doing
is
it.
the
That's where
problem, though. Like that's.
Facebook's not doing it though.
Kinda. The girls have the groups and all the vendors. The
I
vendors are on there
I feel like
against each
websites
other.
like that is a race to the bottom, though. And that's,
It is.
That's my concern, is that then you're making vendors a commodity instead of highlighting the personal, relationship aspect of things and the,
Take your emotion out of it though. As right, I agree with you. Right, I don't want to bid on that front, but there's 1,000 vendors that do. There's 1,000 vendors that play in that space, right? And like us, we don't, right? Like we want that higher end clientele. And there's nothing to say that like you can't say, because that's just going to be like, hey, this is my budget. My budget's like $10,000 to $15,000 as opposed to $5,000 to $10,000. Well, then like the bigger players are going to come out and they're going to have to prove their worth, that they can actually work a $10,000 to $15,000 wedding and show their portfolio that they've actually executed on those things. Then the client will then pick them, right? The client's not going to pick like Joe Schmo who's done 2 weddings for that magical wedding they're looking to like put together, right? So yes, it's going to be a race to the bottom, so to speak, if you've got a price sensitive client, but that's just going to attract the like vendors that want to play in that space. We're not going to play in that space. We're going to look for those higher end clients, right?
but does that then give the vendor an opportunity to vet the client? Or, I mean, like I meet with clients all the time that I say, no, you are not a good fit for us. And I gently turn them away.
That's a good point.
Like I did that today. I had a meeting with a client that was not going to be happy with whatever we did for them. And I just said, you know what? I actually think that you might be better served by.
So maybe the 3-step process.
Okay, we're back to the, yes. Back to the
So
3-step
maybe
process.
the 3-step process is exactly that, right? So step 1 is you guys have all used Calendly.
Yeah.
So the vendors have to schedule a 15-minute or a 30-minute like intro call to make sure there's a fit. And then they get like okayed to say, yeah, I want to accept. The client will say, yeah, I want to accept a quote. And then the vendor will say, yes, I want to give a quote. And then they can submit a quote. They can submit like a bid basically for the job. So maybe that kind of eliminates what you're talking about, where do I actually want to take this client on or not, right? So that could be something that's probably not being done today at all, right?
Yeah. I mean, part of my business model is that we meet with clients before we let them sign a contract.
Oh,
So
yeah, we all
whether
do
that's
too, I think. You
whether
do-
that's a
you do.
virtual
I do too.
or an in-person, because I feel like, especially with planning, like what we do is really intangible. You can't show them pictures of what we do, or like give them a highlight reel, or
But even
say,
though I do, still, you gotta connect with the couple,
It's
right?
the
Like
personal
you're spending
thing,
all
yeah.
day with them.
Yeah.
Both for your own sanity and both for your sanity. We're all a bit crazy.
Yeah,
like everyone in the wedding industry. But
Yeah. We
both for
decided
your
to do this.
sanity and to make sure the couple also has a good experience because that'll fall back on you if they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spend more time with the individual members of my couple sometimes than they do on their wedding day. So it's that personal connection is just so important to me.
For sure.
So I don't ever send out a proposal without a meeting first.
You're also more likely to secure the job if you've at the very least had that phone call, that video call, or that like in-person meeting, because they're more likely to say, oh, this isn't just like a quote coming through on a PDF. This is like actually somebody that I connected with. I'll pay the extra amount, right?
Yeah, I hate the like list of prices on the website or the standard PDF that you send to everybody without having had a chance to talk about their needs and how we can meet those needs first.
So is that your pricing strategy then? You don't have any pricing posted? Yeah. Me as well. I don't post any of my pricing.
I
do
feel
that on
like,
purpose.
especially with something like planning, there are an awful lot of misconceptions when a couple initially contacts me. I feel like a lot of people who want day of coordination actually just want grunt labor to set up and tear down, and that's what they think they want. Until we sit down and talk, and I'm like, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And you can see their eyes getting bigger and bigger, and they're like, oh my God, who's going to do that? I never thought about that. And they're looking at each other going, did you think about that? I didn't think about that. And so the education piece, I feel like, needs to happen as well as the personal connection piece before I submit any kind of proposal.
Where in the order do you think you guys fall in terms of like vendors that are chosen? Are you like somewhere between third, like after the venue and maybe the food? Because I sometimes feel like those are the first two. No? Venue, food?
Yeah, venue, often photography, that kind of thing. But it depends on the service that they're looking for. Like if a couple is sort of pragmatic enough to go, we can't plan this ourselves, then ideally we're the first ones contacted. So that's when we do full planning. Like we sit down right from engagement and we talk through budget first, which gives me a sense of their priorities. And we talk about, I often liken it to buying a house. Like you give your realtor a list of must-haves, and then the realtor says, okay, well, I can find this, this, and this, but not that, that, or that. And so it's all about compromise and priorities. And so we start with the budget, and then we work through and we book all of the vendors. And that's an ideal situation where I'm involved the whole way. And then I know that all the vendors they've booked are awesome. And, I have a really solid grasp on how they want things to look and feel and flow. But like I said, the majority of what we do is day of coordination. So often we're hired. I think I'm going to pull a number out of thin air, like maybe 3/4 of the way through the process.
Yeah.
And I feel like, if I had a nickel for every time I heard, I'm so stressed or I'm so overwhelmed, I think it's when couples start to realize that all of these different vendors that they have booked, now they have to figure out a way to make them all work together. And they don't know how to do that and create a schedule that flows and make sure that they're not having to have their friends and family work on the wedding day. So oftentimes when we first meet with couples for a day of coordination, they have the vast majority of their other vendors booked already, and they've just gone, holy shit, I don't know how to finish this.
I will say that, like, I feel like anytime I get a bride and she has no coordinator, it's a red flag for me.
Well, there's a lot of things, even like when I'm usually one of the last clients, video. Because it's kind of like...
Vendors, you mean?
Sorry, yeah, from the vendors. Because if they I find a lot of... There's either really good clients that like... I've had one that booked me before anybody, and they're like, we want to work around you, but that's a very rare occasion. It's usually like, we have a photographer. Photography always comes first, and then at the end, if they have budget left, they'll get video.
Yeah.
So when I go in, I'm actually surprised sometimes. I'm like talking them through how their day is going to look, and they don't know much about it. I'm like, how don't you know this stuff? Haven't you thought of it at this point? And I'd imagine most couples would be going to you way earlier than...
That would be my hope. But oftentimes it's if if they haven't realized that they're in over their head until a little later in the process, they've already committed to some things, and then I have to figure out how to make it all work together.
So there's got to be authorities in the space that do full wedding planning, and that's like all they do, or that's what they're known for, right? They've clearly done something to establish themselves as, hey, you need to come to me first. So how, it sounds like that you have an appetite to transition, your business to that. So to you, what would be the thing that could change that would allow you to do that?
To transition into more full planning.
Like, what is it? More education with the client base? Is it, creating more awareness like in your local market? Like, what would be the difference maker?
I think a lot of it would probably come down to marketing. And because I have always had the full-time teaching gig, it's worked out really well for me to do a lot of day of. So that's why the business has kind of grown into what it is. It lives in that day of coordination. I do love working with my full planning clients though. And I think some tweaks in marketing, in, website verbiage, in the way we communicate with clients at wedding shows, for instance. That would be definitely a tweak to make, because there are couples who are absolutely looking for full service planning. And
The smart ones.
the-
I know what they're getting
the
into.
smart ones,
The
yeah.
ones that watch enough and they're like, okay, maybe this is too much.
So we have to hear about some of your failures, because we've all kind of shared at some point or another on the podcast, some of our key failures, but there's always like some really good learning that comes out of it. So I would imagine with 50 weddings a year, there's been some that have not gone as planned.
Every wedding we've ever done has been 100% perfect.
Yeah. So maybe not the biggest gong show, but maybe the one that like created the best learning opportunity for you.
Well, I mean, there's learning that comes out of absolutely every single wedding we do, regardless of how happy the couple is or how successful the wedding is. I think back to my first couple of years in business, and there was one wedding where I put all the candles too close to the centerpieces, and I scorched all of their hydrangeas.
At least it wasn't
Like-
a fire.
No fires were set, but the candles definitely, or the flowers definitely didn't look their best. I have
Pretty good, actually.
I have learned about like the most ridiculous things that you need to ask vendors that you wouldn't think you need to ask them. Like, I worked with a DJ once who brought one 6-foot XLR cable, and it was not Matthias. He had one 6-foot cable.
That's it.
Which was not long enough even for the officiant to be able to use a mic during the ceremony. And like,
Just they're standing at the back.
well, like, poor officiant had to yell outside. And I think the farmer next door was combining, and like, it was ridiculous. So I've learned to be just incredibly thorough in my communication before the wedding with vendors. I have learned that, I don't think any vendor intentionally does things wrong or omits parts of their service, but like I've had cakes delivered that are leaning, about to topple over. I've had flowers delivered that are the wrong color. There was one hilarious wedding where I was standing beside the venue coordinator when the flowers were delivered, and the florist is unloading these white hydrangeas, and everything's white and fluffy. And if you know what a hydrangea is, like, it's a big fluffy thing. Okay. And the bride had ordered red roses, and the venue coordinator's going, "Oh, these flowers are so beautiful." And I'm going, "Yep, but like if there are opposites in flower land, like these are them." So, it's the pre-wedding communication that is so very important.
Yeah. So for day of wedding planning, though, you're less on the hook for the other vendor fuck ups.
Yeah,
less.
On paper, yes. In reality, Google and everything else, maybe not so much.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, if you're doing a full kind of start to finish planning, and then you've got a vendor fuck up, then you got to wear that. Right? Because
Yeah.
they're kind of an extension of what you organized from start to finish. Whereas day of, you can't help who they decide to go with. And if that vendor didn't like meet their end of the bargain, that's kind of between the client and the vendor because they kind of negotiated that deal.
Yeah,
right?
and that's absolutely, you just hit the nail on the head there. Like I take an immense amount of ownership over every detail of every wedding I do, whether it's full planning or day of coordination. But yeah, like if there's been, I remember one full plan that I did where they served the wrong cut of meat. And by the time we got to the dinner and the groom called me over and said, "This is a tenderloin."
Oh, it was like
And
that.
I was like,
Oh
there's
my
nothing
God.
you can do, right? And so those hit a lot harder. And all you can do at that point is just own it and apologize and be like, you know
Tenderloin's
what,
delicious,
I'm
though.
so sorry.
It is, but you know,
I'm okay with that.
if I'm big on one thing, steaks. It does matter. Tenderloin, first of all, is a very overrated cut. It's always pricey, right? It's always so pricey. So I could see where someone would get upset if they ordered, I don't know, ribeye or New York, whatever strip. Yeah, yeah, and that makes sense because strip has the little fat on the ends there on the end.
So you don't know how to pour a glass of wine, but you know your cuts of steak.
You know what? I'm going to be honest. Going into this conversation, like I knew that there was day of coordination, and then there was like full coordination, but it didn't even click until this conversation. And I would hazard a guess that if you ask 10 people on the street, you know, about wedding coordinating, they're going to describe to you full wedding coordinating.
I would have thought the same thing
like
too.
not day of, right?
Yeah, that's why I was surprised.
So that's like one of the things that I think is a barrier for you in the sense that like you live in that space, even though the general public probably defines a coordinator as someone that like is with you from start to finish.
Yeah.
Well, and I will freely admit that the term day of coordination is absolute bullshit in the way that we do it. There are day of coordinators in our area who do provide day of service.
Which is
so
awful.
it's like
Which is awful.
oh my gosh.
I know. I've worked with them, and it's like you can tell.
I've had people say to me, yeah, like the coordinator showed up half an hour before the ceremony and it was a gong show because the flowers were wrong and the musicians weren't there. And like when we do day of coordination, we provide support for a year in advance, like virtual support through that automated system that we use. They get an email every month. But then we are fully involved from 6 weeks before the wedding. So day of is garbage. So I always lean towards more service rather than less because I know that couples anticipate that when they hire a wedding planner or coordinator, which is semantics really, I guess, they're expecting that full service experience, even though they've cheaped out, I guess, and booked the
Which is important
the day
because
of.
cheaping out. I was at a wedding once where I swear the coordinator, I don't even know what the purpose of having her there was. I would literally go there, ask a question about the timeline or a discrepancy on it. She's like, I don't know. Looked me straight in the face and said, I don't know. I'm like, this is your job. This is the only phone number I have here. You to ask questions.
You guys,
I don't know.
what
Sorry.
I find is you guys stay a lot longer than most coordinators. But the question that I want to ask you is, on top of not only people not really knowing what they do, there's actually two types of coordinators. There's the ones that are there provided by the venue, and then there's like Amy's company, which is like totally out on their own. What do you think is the difference between what the venue does versus what you do?
We support the client all day, and the venue supports the venue all day. So, I mean, even within the range of venue coordinators, there are some who do very little and some who do a lot. But the venue coordinator is not going to call the officiant the week before the wedding and make sure that they've actually got the correct ceremony time. And the venue coordinator is not going to go to the hotel off-site where the hair and makeup is getting done to check in to make sure that the bridesmaids have been fed. You know, like we just provide extended support for the couple. And that's why we work those extended hours on the day of, because we want to be able to check in on both sides of the couple from sort of mid getting ready to make sure that everybody has what they need. Like I've done ridiculous things like run back to the bride's parents' house and dig through dad's underwear drawer to find his cufflinks. Like stupid little stuff like that that a venue coordinator's not going to do. And we have all the background from all of their vendors. So if they're supposed to have a particular beer on their bar, we know that. Whereas the venue coordinator, if it's an offsite bar, maybe doesn't know the specifics of what's meant to be on their bar rail. And
Do you ever communicate with the venue coordinator?
Oh, yeah.
To kind of like figure out what you guys are doing?
Yeah, 100%. I love working with venue coordinators who love working with me. There are some that are a little territorial and a little bit, they get a little defensive because there are planners out there, as you just mentioned, that are awful and give all of us a bad name because they don't play nice with the vendors. And like I am 100% in it for my clients and I want to make sure that they are happy, full stop. But I also know that hopefully it's the only time I'm ever going to work with them. Like what other industry do you not want repeat business? I don't want my clients to come back to me for their second and third weddings. I want them to be happy with their first one. But the vendors, like I'm working with them multiple times a season in many cases. And so if I piss off a venue planner or if I, offend a bartender or am incompetent for a DJ, that just looks bad on me in the industry. So
that's interesting that you said that. So there's literally no appetite then to spin into just like more broad event planning?
Like corporate and that kind of thing?
Yeah, because that could be lucrative too, right?
It 100%.
That's a very good idea. I've actually noticed there's a need for that.
100%.
There's a big need for it.
Have you done it?
Well, to come back to a couple of things that we talked about earlier. One is the fact that I do still teach full time. 2 is the fact that I'm super passionate about weddings. And 3 is the fact that I don't want to do anything half-assed. So I have never had the time to do corporate because I've been doing both simultaneously. The passion has always been for weddings. And corporate is a whole different ball of wax in terms of the expectations of the client, the management of the budget, the autonomy of the planner. So it's something that, again, if certain education ministers are listening to this and I get fired.
Coordination than day of coordination. Like there's very little like corporate clients that will have you just come in for day of stuff, right? Or like even 6 weeks out. It's going to be like you're leading this from start to finish.
Yeah, and they say, here's your budget, go. We'll see you on the day. So if I were to get fired tomorrow, and that would be something that I would investigate, but I would need a whole lot more education first to do it well.
Yeah, Minister of Education. Get rid of the axe.
We'll talk about it after. I have something to say about that.
Yeah, no. That's interesting because I recently did a few corporate events where they hired in-house people to coordinate, and you can tell like that's not necessarily their strength. Just because somebody does, I don't know, like a health and safety meeting at work, it doesn't necessarily translate that they are going to be good at putting together an event and telling people where they should be and what they should do. But I noticed that there was a bit of chaos, and I remember thinking, I'm like, a coordinator would help this. But I'm kind of on your thinking on your wavelength where you're like, it would have to be someone in-house because of the budgets. You need to know like what you can and can't do, maybe certain policies. I don't know.
There's pros and cons to both approaches, right?
Yeah.
So like even if you look at the mobile bar business, there's like a lot of mobile bar providers that like just they find a niche and that's their thing and they don't stray away from it. They're like, we only do, I've got a horse trailer, right? We've only do the horse trailer weddings and we only do like that rustic style and that's what we do, right? Whereas we're like, yeah, we'll do that and we'll also like do the Modern Mom show and we'll kind of do a Barbie party and whatever you want us to do, we're going to do, right? And to me, at least, the pros of that approach is your clients can turn into repeat clients.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's,
so you can create that more of that repeat business.
Question for you. What's easier, a wedding client or corporate?
Corporate, 100%.
100%.
Who do you charge more?
Corporate.
Really? What, corporate more than wedding?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because they don't care.
No, let me put some
It's
pushback
a lot
on
of,
that.
I
No,
mean, the
I'm
couple is so
putting some
emotional. They're
pushback.
so emotionally tied to it. Whereas a corporate event, if it runs smoothly, then
And a lot of times I'm also dealing with couples who are just getting their start in life. They've just started their career. They're maybe trying to save for a house, and their $50,000 is a lot more to them than, big business corporation X's $50,000, right? And they're not emotionally attached to it as a wedding couple would be.
Yeah, I actually get this. I don't know how much you guys run into this, but I get a lot of clients that book their private parties as part of their businesses. And then I know I've got a little bit more play in terms of how I'm going to price that. Right? Because I know that it's a business expense for that client, right? So whenever you know that something can be a business expense, you've got a little bit more play, right? Because they're going to write it off, right?
Whereas no part of a wedding can be written off.
Exactly. You can't really write off your wedding. So
Interesting. No, sorry. Say what you're gonna say.
no, nothing. Go for it.
Okay, that's really interesting. I never looked at it from that point of view. Me personally, I find like the weddings are a little bit easier because as much as like, okay, this is gonna sound bad when I say this, but like as much as like, okay, it's special to them, we've all done so many that we know if we follow this formula, you should be good.
You've done it so many times.
Yeah, right. Like I know there's certain things, and I want to even say that the one time where I did fuck up with a client was when I kind of inadvertently let them know that I wasn't really worried about what they were thinking of, and because they were they were so worried about the emceeing aspect of things, and in my head I'm like, man, you don't need to worry about that. What you need to be worried about is this. And they kind of picked up on that, and that really upset the client. And I almost lost them because of it. But when the day of the situation came, they were at rave, and they're like, man, you did such a great job and whatnot. In my head, I'm like, I know. But in their mind, because of what they're thinking is important, for me, I was just kind of like, you're worried about the wrong things.
And they so often get fixated on
Yes.
things that really don't matter.
Yeah.
Like nobody cares how your napkins are folded or what kind of flowers you have in your bouquet.
So for me, I find weddings to be way higher stress, like in terms, because like it is someone's most important day, right? And like the bar is probably one of the more important vendors day of. We're probably one of the last that gets thought of in terms of like booking, but day of, like that's where everybody's hanging out. That's where
Creates the
everybody's going, right?
experience, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you're like, when it comes to the experiential marketing and what we do, like we have to execute, right? And oftentimes like there's like, if I get an employee that calls in sick, that is like huge stress for me, right? Because like now I've got to like, I've got to make margaritas and I don't really know how to make margaritas, right? So and that's happened. Actually at a wedding that your team was planning. Yeah. So I was like, fuck, we're going to give it a go. Here we go. I mean, by the end of it, I was a margarita expert, but yeah. The first few margaritas, the client had to tell me how to make them. So yeah. But that, I mean, that's also like the thing that you also have to understand is that most people are very understanding, you know what I mean? And they'll like kind of be like, okay, it's cool. Like we're just going to, have a good time. Right. But there's like high pressure. You could make or break somebody's day if you don't execute. Right?
Yeah. And like also like to add on top of that too, for me personally with the corporate vendors, whenever they come and they're putting on something, oftentimes they have an idea in their head on how I should do my job. And as a DJ, you kind of have to stereotype a little bit.
Yes and no, but
Hold on. So I did a party for real estate agents. And what I noticed is it was a whole bunch of different like firms that were there, right? So when I saw that in my head, I'm like, this is more likely going to be a networking event more than so it's going to be a party where everyone's.
Isn't that easier though? It's less stress because it's like you're more so in the background. So it's like you get to like kind of play around. It's not as important to have everyone there on the dance floor the entire time.
That's where the person putting on the corporate events coming up to me like, hey, you need to have it like pumping in here. Like you got to do some things to get them all on the dance floor. Play something from the 60s. I promise it'll work. And I'm like, what the fuck are you saying? That's not the kind of event that it is, because if you noticed, they were all by the bar and they're all socializing. They're all bumping like this, doing little dances over there. And I'm like, you know what? this is probably as lively as it's gonna get over on that side. The dance floor,
You could already tell.
might not, yeah, and also too, they're competing with each other. I'm not gonna let Stacy from Century 21 see me looking crazy, you know what I mean? When I work for like Remax, so that's how I was thinking. But it's interesting how I think because we're all different vendors, our experiences are different and would make our opinions differ a little bit.
Yeah, like for me, corporate events are usually much easier. Like usually a corporate client is looking for just somebody at SmartServe, to be honest, right? And they're maybe looking for something a little bit like higher end than what they would put on themselves, right? So like if I roll up with my horse trailer, it's like, whoa, it like blows them away, right? And then I'm just cracking beers and pouring wine. Like it's not anything, or like rum and cokes, nothing too crazy. But I can still charge almost the same amount as I do a wedding client because it's a corporate vendor, right? Because it's like within their budget. And as long as I get a good feel, and that's like when it comes to pricing strategy, you have to establish what their budget is with a corporate client almost way ahead of the game so that you know what you're playing with, right? Whereas with like, if you go right to the like monetary discussion with a wedding client, that could be a turnoff, right? So you have to almost like, you have to feel that out like organically, like is this a price sensitive client or not? And then do your pricing accordingly, right?
Which is the same reason why I meet with clients before I send them any kind of proposal.
Right.
Because I need to know
Are they price sensitive or not?
whether,
right?
and where are they placing their value? And then sometimes within the span of that half hour, 45-minute initial consultation, I'm spinning it so that they think they want someone to set up, but then they don't realize that they also need,
So
15 other things.
So the question I was going to ask was, have you ever had a client where, maybe the vibe wasn't what you wanted and you're like, listen, I'm still going to provide a quote, but I'm going to price this like in a higher price band than I typical. So you're basically trying to price out your client and then they still go for it.
Yes, actually. Yes, sometimes that strategy fails. It backfires.
We've all had that happen, right? Where we're like,
Yeah.
this price.
Yeah.
And then they're like, yep. We're like, fuck, I guess I'm doing it.
Yeah. And that was actually so two things. One, I did do a consult earlier today where I suspected from the initial inquiry form that they submitted that it wasn't going to be a good fit. And then I got on a Zoom call with this bride and asked a couple of questions. And immediately I was like, nope. And then I started immediately directing towards budget because usually that's a pretty hard no for most couples. And she started to say, well, we could extend it. And so then it's like, okay, I don't want you to extend your budget and then me work with you and not make you happy. And so I sort of segued from budget into like, I actually don't think that we can execute your vision to a level that you would be happy with. And she accepted that.
Like
finally.
within the budget that she was looking for, basically? Or?
I said, even if you extend your budget,
okay.
we can't.
Yeah.
Which is super important though, because a lot of people don't understand their own boundaries and they'll see the paycheck. And I understand if you're starting and you need the business, but I feel like there's a certain point you reach where that's a really important and crucial part.
Well, you need to know, at least for myself, I don't ever want to overpromise and underdeliver because it's going to look bad on my business. Even if the client doesn't give me a bad review, if they post their pictures and tag us and somebody's like, oh my God, like that looks like shit. Like we did a wedding a few weeks ago. I say because I wasn't on the wedding, but the decorator that they hired was literally using stuff from Dollarama and it just looked Stella was on that wedding. I'm sure you heard all about it and saw the pictures. It just looked horrible. And so my team edited decor all day and just kind of tried to improve things. But it was
experience.
Somebody starting out and they, they said, oh yeah, we can replicate those pictures. And then
that's one of the challenges for us of like doing private parties is, a lot of the times we're so Instagram driven, like in terms of our business, we're like 70 to 80% of my bookings are like generated through social media and Instagram. So like stuff has to look good, right? So when you do a private party in like a private residence, It doesn't happen very often because most of the time we price ourselves to a point where like it's people that are getting decorators and stuff like that. So like it actually looks like really Instagram worthy, right?
But
then there are times where they go they spend their money on the bar and now they're like going to Dollarama, and then same kind of scenario, right? I was doing another job and then my other crew was at that one and I got the pictures and I was like, oh boy. I was like, we're gonna post one picture from this one. Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about like, I feel like wedding coordinators, planners in general are the number one vendor that communicate with every other vendor. You have the most amount of communication with everyone there. Yeah. Sure, we'll get there. So we basically try to chat with whoever we can, but you literally have to chat with everyone. Yeah, so a little tip for other vendors out there, like how do they get your attention? You clearly have your set of recommended vendors that you want to work with because they do a good job. What do you look for when you're working with other vendors, and what kind of,
she doesn't want you to bother her. If you got your shit on point, she's going to be like, oh, finally.
Well, the vendors that are on my standard recommended list, which I don't publish and I don't share with anyone other than clients who I feel are appropriately sort of tailored to those vendors.
You probably have a few where you're
I
know this would be perfect.
I have an unofficial list of preferred vendors, but we work well with everyone because we do so much day of coordination that we have to work with the vendor that the couple has already booked, right? But the vendors that I recommend and over again are the ones that are communicative. I don't know what it is, but I mean, if you're running your own business, you got to damn well answer your email. You got to answer your phone, return a voicemail. Like, I work with or have had to work with a lot of vendors because the couple have hired them prior to hiring me, where they will not call me back. They will not confirm details. They will not. I worked with a caterer this past year who didn't return any one of a number of my messages. And then we got there on the day of the wedding and they had a different dinner time than I had. They had a different menu than what the bride had printed on her menu cards that were on the table. And I was like, if you had just fucking called me back, like we could have sorted this out last week. And it was quite a confrontational situation because he got super defensive about it. And I was like, listen, like I'm working with what my couple gave me and you didn't call me back to confirm. So the communication element is just so vitally important. I'm only going to work with vendors or recommend vendors who do great work. Like if you return your video and it's shit, I'm not going to recommend, or if you bring the wrong
if you can't make a margarita.
You can't make a margarita. You're cut. If you play the wrong first dance song, those are not the DJs I'm going to recommend. But a lot of it just comes back to that personal thing. And maybe that's just me as a human. Like, I want to connect with other people that I feel like I vibe with. And that's actually another reason why I do so much day of coordination, is because a lot of the couples that book us for that are really down to earth, and they're the kind of people that I would want to go out for a beer with. I don't actually feel like I, as a human, vibe with the couple who's going to spend $1 million on their wedding and they're going to prioritize their napkin fold over their personal vows. And, it's, so whether it's couples or vendors, it's personal. Are you a good person? Are you the kind of person who's going to reach out to me after the wedding and say, hey, here's a copy of the highlight reel. I just thought you might want to see it. Or are you going to share the gallery of sneak peek photos? Or, are you going to tag me on your social media even though I'm not in your bar pictures or whatever, right? Those are the kind of vendors that I want to recommend and work with repeatedly, are the ones that value the connection aspect, I think, and who have amazing services as well.
Are there any vendors stereotypically, the vendor types that are more challenging to work with? For instance, on the whole, just because you said catering, caterers are sometimes more challenging. Is there ones that you're this is a 50-50 chance gonna go good or bad?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think maybe 5 or 10 years ago, I would have said it's the more creative ones, like the no, like the visually, let's say visually creative ones.
This is
Like
getting personal.
okay, you might have to edit this out. I don't know.
I'm just joking.
But like the decorators, the florists, the
Videographers,
the
the
photographers. No, well, I mean everybody who works on a wedding is creative. So probably my choice of wording there.
No. I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you because I've seen it as well. Working.
So it used to be like the artsy fartsy vendors, but I feel like actually a lot of the visual vendors that I work with are awesome. I'm finding a lot of times it's the emerging vendors, the newer, like I'm just trying to break into this. Like there's one
Like
particular
charcuterie boards or something like that.
there's one particular caterer that I'm working with right now who does kick-ass food. Like it's amazing and he knows what he's doing. His communication is awful. And I just want to like take him out for a coffee and say, listen, like, I want to see you succeed here, but you've got to return your emails. Like, I have clients reaching out to me saying, hey, Amy, like, I know you recommended this guy and I reached out 3 times and I haven't heard back, or like he missed a phone call or whatever. And that makes me take him off my recommended list, even though I know he's great, because his communication is so awful. And so these days, those are the vendors that I'm having the most trouble with, are like the new ones who are just so busy, but they're not prioritizing the actual initial communication with the client as an important step in the relationship that is going to make the whole experience successful.
Or does it continue, right? A lot of people just take that money, they know the client's booked, and then they kind of just let things slide at that point.
And they ghost them for a year
I think
and figure
it's
they'll
amazing how
follow
much
up.
of your competition you beat out just by being reliable and like responsive. Yes, responsive. Yeah.
Well, for a lot of people, I mean, you besides the point, I know you have 2 full-time jobs really, but I mean, in the wedding industry, there's a lot of people that do this just as a side gig. So all day they're working somewhere else and they come home and they want to relax. They're not on their emails being as communicative as they could be. So I feel like that could be part of the problem.
It is a challenge. Like as someone who also works full time and then has this as a side hustle, it's a challenge, right? And like I pride myself on being very responsive, but there are some times where like I unexpectedly will get like 4 requests for a quote in one day, and it's just bad timing, right? It's just like I literally can't get back to these people like right away.
But even to send...
But what I do is I send a note and I say, hey, just acknowledging that I have received your request for a quote.
Okay, well, that's still communication, right? A lot of people miss that part.
But yeah, exactly. So, you know, you may wait a little bit, but I'm going to get back to you, and here's what I'm going to get back to you, right?
And I think, like, as someone who's maybe starting out in catering and trying to get your name, or in any segment of the industry, trying to get your name out there, you feel like you're spread so thin and you've got all of the fingers in all of the pies. But even that goes an awfully long way to somebody who is so invested in this one wedding that they're ever going to have. You know, like they want you to respond instantly, because there's a book by Robertson Davis called Fifth Business, and it's like, you are the most important person in your own life, and that's their wedding is the most important event in the world. And if their caterer or potential caterer or whatever doesn't get back to them for 5 or 6 days, then that's an immense trust breaker right there.
Even if you have an automated email saying, I'm away for the week, I'll be back on Monday.
Well, yeah, and some vendors have just a 24/7 automated email saying, hey, like, it's the weekend, I'm not going to get back to you, I'm sorry, in better words, of course. But like I have, when anyone fills out a quote request on my site, I have an automated email that goes back and says, like, we will get back to you within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Weekends are often devoted to events. Sundays are family day. So, honor that. But then otherwise you'll hear from us in 24 hours. We get back to couples within 24 hours.
I used to think that you always had to always, even if it's a Sunday and Sundays are holy for us that do events and all kinds of stuff. I would be planning meetings on Sundays or answering all emails, catching up. And it's no, it's okay to let them know hey, I have a life too. And just.
Yeah. If you don't set boundaries, they won't they won't set boundaries either, right? Like
Yeah.
couples, if you respond to them at 3 p.m. on a Sunday, they're going to assume you're working.
Yeah.
Whereas if you tell them, no, it's my family time,
Yeah.
they will absolutely understand that.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And that's often a challenge for any kind of new entrepreneur in this industry, is learning to set your boundaries, right? Because you can work 24/7.
Oh, 100%.
You can work around the clock. right?
Especially
So-
with a phone on your hip all day, every day, right? Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's always something you could be doing from either a business development standpoint or a client relationship standpoint. There's always something.
There's a question that I had when we were talking about pricing. It has to do with kind of your credentials and also timing. When do you kind of learn that, like, okay, maybe I don't need to be so flexible with my pricing and like I can charge this? Why? Because I know I do good service. Do you think that goes hand in hand with, I don't know, whether it's Google reviews or like your credibility? Like, when do you kind of know that?
You're talking about claiming your value.
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
I think can I answer this like from my perspective,
Yeah.
and then I'll give you some time.
Especially like starting out with no history of doing anything or.
I think you learn that as you go, right?
Okay.
You are going to do jobs and you're like, wow, I undercharged this.
Yeah.
Or, you're going to start to learn what your worth is, right? And then also what the market is demanding, right? So like, I think it's a blend of like, what am I worth? What do I want for this? Like, what do I think is fair value? And then what can I actually get in the market that I'm in for this service, and then finding that right balance. And then that conversation will also flex from client to client, like we talked about, like wedding clients, corporate clients, right? So it's finding kind of your price band that you're happy with, where you feel like you're claiming your value, right? Which I think is something that you have to just discover as you go. It's really hard to just say, hey, you're a DJ, this is what you're valued at. Well, it depends, like maybe the type of DJ you are, or maybe it's like, maybe you're a niche DJ and nobody does that kind of music, and like that's more highly valued, and like that, therefore you can charge more, right?
So to bounce back on you, how did you figure out your pricing? How
I'll
long
let
did
you-
it take
I'll let you know when I figure it out. I don't know,
Still working on it.
I don't know. I mean, as you're talking, I've got 18 things to say and I'll forget 17 and a half of them. But I feel like part of it for me was when I had my daughter. So I was married in 2009 and our daughter wasn't born until 2017. And my husband is also a full-time teacher and he's also a gigging musician. So he is crazy busy and I was crazy busy, and it was okay because you could just do all the things and probably not charge what your actual worth is, but it didn't really matter because he was off on a gig and I wasn't home, and who cares if I'm not being paid hourly what I'm worth, right? Yeah. So part of it is that I have been and am hopefully putting more value on family time since my daughter was born, because she's 6 and she was just born yesterday, right? Like it goes so fast and I don't want to miss out on that. So I'm more inclined now to say, no, I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to price this to make it worth my while to be out of the house and miss 6 hours of her waking time. So that's part of it. The other part of it is experience, right? Like you have to do something, recognize that you massively undercharged for it, and then understand that the next time you have to not undercharge for it. Like the number of times I've agreed to do something and then looked back on it and been like, shit, why did I do that? Like I made no money. In fact, oftentimes I lose money because it's important to me to pay my team for their time. But then if I've undercharged for that time, then I'm in the hole. So eventually experience hopefully helps you to learn what your real value is. But I mean, I still am a people pleaser. I always have been and probably always will be, although I'm trying to stop. So if I have a client that I really love, and I've been working with them and they're great and they're, like a personal connection, I'm more inclined to do something for less than I probably should because I want to help them out, So like, that was a non-answer.
It also comes down to educating your clients, right? Because like you mentioned, a lot of people don't realize until it's too late, and then they come to you for the last quarter of everything. Whereas it's the same thing from my side, where people look at it, they're like, oh, you're just capturing the day, you're just doing some videos, and then you're editing. I'm like, yeah, but I gotta know a lot more. I'm doing a lot of pre-planning. When we're there, we need all this equipment. Now I need an assistant with me. I need a second shooter. And then after, you're culling through hours of footage. Then you're editing. Then you literally have to color grade it. Like each clip, it's like taking an individual photo and having to individually color it, syncing the audio. There's so many steps. And if you don't tell the client that, they're not going to know what's involved. And then they're not going to understand.
They're not going to appreciate. They're not going to appreciate it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Well, and I always use the example with my clients of like their experiences pre-wedding, pre-engagement have been the experiences of like a general person going through life. So you go out for dinner, you go to a restaurant, you sit down, you have a drink, you have a meal, you pay the bill, you leave. And it costs you, like $80 a person or whatever. But you didn't have any pre-planning with the chef. You didn't sit down with the owner of the restaurant and talk about what color your napkins were going to be. There's so much less face-to-face interaction with the people providing the service. And there's also less emotional investment. Like if you go to a restaurant and your meal sucks, maybe it sucked enough that you give them a bad review, but you just never go back. Whereas if it's a wedding, like you're just so much more, like you go to the supermarket and you buy a bouquet of flowers for $25, but it's been put together by a florist who just grabs what they have in stock and they throw it in a bucket of water and you buy it when it's 5 days old. And whereas if you're buying a wedding bouquet, like you have multiple consultations with that florist and you change your order 3 times and, they call you the week before to confirm delivery. Like the price of wedding services is higher than the price of regular day-to-day life services because of the high touch aspect of it. But couples don't realize that. Like they relate it to, well, I go out for dinner and it costs this much, or I buy that bouquet and it costs this much. And they don't know that you spend 11 billion hours afterwards editing their videos. They don't know that you've scouted the site beforehand unless you tell them that, right?
And there's some people that do take those shortcuts. But that's 100%. Our job to tell them why we're different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the face-to-face meeting is so important.
So we're getting pretty close to the end here, so I figure we should. Yeah,
hold on. One more question. I'm actually curious because, I'm sure back in 2009 you weren't doing as many Zoom meetings as you are now.
My God! My Zoom membership just renewed. I didn't get it till 2019.
Oh.
Okay, so back then versus before COVID, and then after COVID, are you going back and what's your meetings? What do your meetings consist of now? And what were they before? I'm just curious, how you communicate, how you do your consultations.
So my preference and the way I had done it pre-COVID was face-to-face meeting. You sit there, you talk to the couple, you gauge their interest and their priorities, and you develop that connection. And then also there's a couple of sales techniques there too, right? Like I would always leave them with a bottle of wine, which provides a little bit of obligation. If I give you this, then you give me something else, right? So a little bit of it is manipulative, salesy stuff. I try not to make, I don't want it to be slimy.
You're not being pushy. You're just
salesy. But,
No, it's not. But we're in business.
It's like congratulations, you're engaged.
And then we went into exclusively Zoom / other online medium consults, which are better than a phone call, in my opinion, because at least you can see their eyes when they're talking. I always feel like the connection isn't quite as authentic when you're in a virtual meeting. So I will always, if possible, push for a physical meeting, because then I can still give them their wine. But I just feel like it's a little bit more sort of natural. And I always find my in-person meetings go a little bit longer than my Zoom meetings, but it's because there's more of an authentic connection there. Yeah. So that's always my preference. But I do feel like a lot of people, since they've realized that an online meeting is a thing since COVID, they will default to that. So I I don't know, of the initial meetings and itinerary meetings and all of the meetings that we do, I still try to do most of them in person, but I still have maybe 20% that are
Nice.
that are virtual.
For the record, don't feel bad. Dave said you'll be surprised how far Timmy's card goes. So you're not the only one giving
Well,
stuff away.
so we give. I do like to kind of surprise and delight where we can. So we give that initial consult, like no obligation, you haven't booked yet, but here's a congratulatory bottle of wine. But then we do gift along the way as well, because I feel like it's their big day, their big experience, and so we don't do Timmy's. We do a local coffee shop if possible before the wedding, so that they can have a coffee date and connect.
Very nice.
And just kind of not talk about the wedding in the weeks before the wedding, and then we do a day of gift as well. So
Yeah, very nice.
What's the percentage of your in-person consultations?
It's drastically dropped now. It's probably 90% Zoom now.
Zoom. You?
I was working from home, right? Whereas now I have an office, so I'm trying to move over to the in-person. Yeah. My start, like I work video, right? So I made sure all my Zoom calls, I had a professional camera on me so you could see the quality. I had my lights set up so they could actually, like when they went on that Zoom call, they would be like, this looks different for some reason. They might not even notice.
They're like, I can see your pores.
So,
actually,
Zoom wouldn't Facebook does this thing where it chomps your quality down.
It
Zoom
does to a point, but
okay.
I mean, lighting and a good camera still go a long way, right?
Yes,
I always tried to do that.
I think I made that comment with you when we had a Zoom call the one night.
Yeah. You did. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
why.
like, Jesus Christ, you look sexy.
Damn, thank you. But no, I definitely want to steer away from that and do it in person because I agree. Like having the in-person connection with.
Well, you look even sexier in person.
I guess it'll work in my benefit.
Part of it, from my perspective, is a little bit self-serving too. In that, if I can get them into my studio, I'm like, and we have this beautiful studio space which you can rent to get ready on the day of your wedding.
Yeah.
There's that aspect of things too. But
sometimes
host your bridal shower here.
That's a great idea, actually.
It's a cool spot. Same office as I was there a couple of years ago, but
So it's that's where you filmed it. Yeah.
And it's excellent. So I love how you can switch the looks in the room really quickly with just like the back. I don't know what you call them, the backdrops that she has. You could switch them up, and you could get the really nice, like kind of modern, not really corporate. I don't know what would you call it. And then there's the other side with the more wedding kind of
contemporary versus wedding.
Yeah.
What's your
Both
address?
looking great.
So people know. Like you don't have to give the exact place, but like where are you located?
We're at the corner of Adelaide and Princess.
Okay.
He was talking about your residential address.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for a long time, Google refused to update it, so I had people showing up at my house for wedding showers for a little while. Yeah.
Your husband had to turn him away.
Yeah.
What's your residential address in case someone wants to stalk you? So we always like to end the podcast with 2 key questions. The first being, how do you define success?
Well, I think success ultimately is being able to pay my mortgage and being able to spend time with the people I love. So I can pay my mortgage, and I do get to spend time with the people I love and still do what I love while making it all fit together. So it's a bit of a juggling game. Matthias has seen my calendar. He knows that there are no days that don't have dots because my husband and myself are crazy busy. But, the luxury of, I guess, being at this point in my planning career and my life is that I have and am continuing to learn how to delegate and trust my team and offload some things so that I do get to still enjoy the reasons that I started the business, which are that I get to share in couples, most exciting day, often most special day, most happy day. And I get to share that with them, but I still get to balance that with friends and family. And yeah.
I've also heard your 2 businesses have kind of crossed paths. Like some of your students
Oh, okay. We don't need to talk about how old I am. Thank you very much. I have done weddings for past students, and I hate that I'm that old. So let's just not talk
That's
about
really
that.
cool.
Cool, actually, though. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it is pretty wild, actually. Because they will forever be like a grade 10 clarinet player. And then they're like, hey, I'm getting married. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're 15. What are you talking about?
I'm sure they must slip up and call you by your teacher name when
They do. I have to have conversation. Like,
And they feel like out of respect you just say it, right?
Like they can't call you by your first
no,
name.
just call me Amy. No.
All right, Paul, you want to wrap us up with the last one?
Second question. So, if you were to start from the beginning, ground zero, and you had $10,000 to invest in your business, how would you do it?
Well, I think, first and foremost, education.
For yourself.
For myself, yeah. I, as I've mentioned, like to be fully invested, but also fully competent in any area that I tackle. So education in whatever capacity. I think that we talked about the certification and that was important, but in terms of long-term relevance, I don't know that I look back on that and go, oh, I'm so glad I did it because I learned so many things. I would probably, and this isn't spending my $10,000, but I would probably try to apprentice or shadow or volunteer or, you learn to do by doing, whether it's teaching or wedding planning. I would probably spend a little bit more time getting all of my ducks in a row before launching the business. I kind of learned through trial by fire, which worked. But I feel like it would have perhaps been a quicker, less painful climb had I done a little bit more education, shadowing, experiential stuff first. And then I think I probably would invest in a good website and a social media manager or virtual assistant or some form of something like that right from the get-go. My first website, oh my God.
We haven't heard that one yet, I don't think.
It was a Vistaprint template that was brown and brown and brown. It was about 18 shades of brown. And looking back on it, I shudder. And I have pictures of the first wedding show booth that I did that had to match my branding. So it was brown and I just so I think I would probably, knowing what I know now, although that's kind of a catch-22 because social media wasn't what it is now back in 2009. So, but I definitely think that if I were targeting today's couples and I were starting today, I would invest in the online to spend my $10,000, and then I would volunteer my time to gain the experience part of it.
So I have a question for you, and it's a little bit, I gotta ask it in the right way. So I've noticed the way that you answer questions, you're very good at analyzing what you're being asked. And I don't know whether that's more so who you are as a person or if you have a system that you follow that helps you break down whether, I don't know if it's a question or do you get does that make sense what I'm saying?
Well, I did a lot, when I was interviewing for teacher jobs, I did a lot of interview prep kind of, here's how to answer a question kind of thing. I don't know whether that's influencing the way I do this now or
even the
not,
way
but
you answered our question, that probably the best answer we've got, right? Just the way you're able to understand what we asked you, but then you clearly articulated it. I guess, yes, there's some parts of that.
I had an hour and a half to think about it. Because I gave her a heads up.
Did you?
Yeah. I gave her a heads up. Yeah.
That's good.
So she probably formulated it for the last hour and a half.
That's still pretty good, though.
It's brilliant right on this one.
You know what? Because I don't know if I had that time, I don't know if I could have clearly articulated it. You know what I mean? There's a lot going on up here, but sometimes it's kind of harder to put it out there nicely and neatly. So it's a very nice answer, basically, in short.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody thinks I'm articulate because I don't feel that.
It's a very good answer.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah.
How can people find you? Social media tags?
Yeah,
Whatever you want to put out there.
so we are unmistakably.you.com, Instagram at unmistakably.you, Facebook for the old people, unmistakably.you. I mean, it's all pretty. It's impossible to spell, but it's all the same.
Okay.
That's actually let's go back in time to when I was starting the business, and like I would not name it with something that's hard to spell. I've always been a good speller, and I didn't even think about that, but people misspell unmistakably in a million different ways. And also, it starts with a U, which puts me at the bottom of every alphabetical directory. So, name your business with an A.
It's true.
Pro tip.
Or a B.
Or B. Yeah, but they also don't know how to say my...
Well, that's yours is hard to pronounce if they don't speak French. So, yeah.
That's why we gravitate towards B&B, so that people can just like know what it is. Yeah. But it does lead to a lot of questions, right? They're
Gets
like,
people talking.
Yeah, they're like bulls and beers.
Yeah.
They're like, what is
the
that?
go-to?
I have to describe it. Anyways, it was a pleasure. I think you're our first event coordinator or wedding planner to come on to the podcast. So we learned a ton about wedding planning. So
Yeah, we appreciate you coming out.
yeah, we'll definitely have to have you again at some point.
The wine company, I don't come back.
I was gonna say
It's your trick we're learning here.
that's our podcast sales
There you
technique.
go.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Amy, and we'll chat next time.
Sounds great.
Nice.
Cheers.